The iPhone 18 Pro price story just changed, and potentially in a good way, because for the last few weeks, we've been hearing some pretty uncomfortable numbers. $12.99, maybe even $13.99 for the base iPhone 18 Pro, and honestly, at that point, you start asking a very different question. Not what's new, more like, why am I paying laptop money for an iPhone? But now Mark Gurman is pointing towards something much less painful, possibly just a $100 price increase that would put the iPhone 18 Pro at $11.99 and the iPhone 18 Pro Max at $12.99. Still expensive, but very different from $13.99, and the timing is getting interesting too. Apple is reportedly preparing to send out invites very soon, with the iPhone event likely happening on Wednesday, September 9, so we are not months away anymore. We're basically at the finish line. And in this video, we need to figure out three things. What will the iPhone 18 Pro actually cost? Are the new A20 Pro chip, bigger battery, camera changes, and design updates enough to justify that increase? And then there's the other phone Apple may put on stage, the foldable iPhone Ultra, because that could completely change how people look at the regular Pro models. Let's start with price, because honestly, that's probably what most people care about right now. Apple's current starting point in the report you shared is $10.99 for iPhone 17 Pro and $11.99 for iPhone 17 Pro Max. Now, analysts have been warning about rising costs. Memory is more expensive. Storage is more expensive. The new camera system costs more, and Apple is moving to newer silicon. So earlier estimates pushed the iPhone 18 Pro all the way to $12.99 or even $13.99. That would be a huge jump, but Gurman's latest argument is much more interesting. Samsung and Google have reportedly raised prices on their latest flagships by around $100. So Apple could simply do the same iPhone 18 Pro $10.99 to $11.99. That is about a 9% increase. Pro Max $11.99 to $12.99 again. Not cheap, but compared with a $200 or $300 hike, a lot easier to swallow. And apparently Apple has a reason not to push too far. If the company jumps straight to $13.99, you get sticker shock. Simple people start comparing the phone with Max iPads, foldables, even other premium devices, but $11.99. Apple stays much closer to Samsung territory. That matters, and there's something else here. Apple has already warned about pressure on gross margins that suggests it may be absorbing some of these component costs itself, instead of dumping all of them onto you, which sounds nice, but there may be a catch. The 256 GB base model could get only the $100 increase. Higher storage, that could hurt more. 512 GB 1 TB, and whatever comes above that, those versions could reportedly see $150 or even $200 increases. So if you're the person who always buys 1 TB, don't celebrate, yet the $11.99 headline may not be your price. And let me ask you something. Would you rather Apple keep the Pro at $11.99 but make higher storage much more expensive? Or just spread the price increase evenly across the lineup? Because I think most normal buyers would take the first option. Keep the entry price lower, let the people who need 1 TB pay more now. What are you actually getting for that extra $100? This is where the A20 Pro chip matters. The latest information you shared points to around an 18% CPU performance improvement. Now, normally, I'd say who cares? Because modern iPhones are already fast. If Instagram opens 0.1 second quicker, great, my life is changed. But the more important number is not 18%, it's 30% better energy efficiency. That's the one I'm watching, because performance is already good. Battery and heat, those still matter. A 30% efficiency improvement does not automatically mean 30% longer battery life. Important difference: the screen still uses power, the modem uses power, cameras use power, apps use power, but it gives Apple much more room. Maybe the phone runs cooler, maybe gaming holds performance longer, maybe 5G drains less battery, maybe Apple gets more battery life without putting in a dramatically larger cell. And on the Pro Max, Apple may be doing both better efficiency and a bigger battery. This is where the numbers get really interesting. The iPhone 18 Pro Max is reportedly moving to around 5,567 mAh. That represents roughly a 10 to 12% increase in battery capacity. Based on the details you shared, 10 to 12%, that is not one of those tiny 2% changes. Nobody can feel that substantial. Now combine that with a chip claimed to be around 30% more energy efficient. Suddenly, the Pro Max becomes very interesting for one simple reason: battery life. And honestly, if Apple gives me 2 more benchmark charts or noticeably longer battery life, I'm taking battery every time. What about the normal iPhone 18 Pro? That one is reportedly getting only around a 1 to 2% battery increase, much smaller, and that creates a pretty clear difference between these two models. If battery is your #1 priority, Pro Max could have a real advantage this year, not just because it's physically bigger, because its battery is apparently growing much more, but of course, you don't fit a 10 to 12% larger battery into exactly the same space for free. The phone is reportedly getting thicker, about 0.25 millimeters. Thicker has been mentioned now. I know what some people will say, oh, no thicker iPhone. Seriously, a quarter of a millimeter. If that gets me a noticeably larger battery, fine, take the 0.5 mm. I'll survive. Would you rather Apple shave another quarter millimeter off the phone or give you 10% more battery? Exactly, this obsession with thinness only makes sense until your phone dies at 6 p.m. Now design, don't expect some crazy total redesign. The iPhone 18 Pro is still expected to keep an aluminum chassis and glass back, so this is more refinement than reinvention. But the colors are interesting. Dark cherry and sky blue. Dark cherry especially could be the one everyone goes after. And you already know how this works. New launch color. Every thumbnail uses it. Every reviewer orders it. Pre-orders open. Then suddenly that one configuration slips by 2 weeks. So if you want dark cherry on day 1, I wouldn't sit there deciding after pre-orders opened. But color isn't why you buy a Pro camera, might be, and this is one of the reasons analysts think the phone is getting more expensive. A new camera system. We've already been hearing about camera upgrades for iPhone 18 Pro, including possible changes to how the main camera controls light. And that's actually more interesting to me than another megapixel jump, because Apple doesn't need to go 48 megapixels, 60 megapixels, 100 megapixels. That becomes a spec sheet race. What matters more is what the lens can actually do. Better light control, better depth of field, better low light consistency, better video. Those are real improvements, but here's the problem. More complicated camera hardware costs money and takes space, so you've got a bigger battery, new camera components, new silicon, and higher memory costs. Now that $100 price increase starts looking surprisingly modest, and that's basically Gurman's point. Given the component situation, a 9% increase to $1199 might actually mean Apple is eating part of the cost. Which is funny because normally nobody hears $1199 iPhone and says, wow, what a bargain, but compared with $1399. Yeah, suddenly $1199 looks pretty good. That's how pricing works now. Base storage, this one matters. The report says 256 GB remains the starting capacity. Good, because at this price, anything less would feel ridiculous. 256 GB is enough for a lot of people, but if you shoot a ton of high-resolution video, download big games, or keep your phone for 4 or 5 years, 512 GB becomes attractive very quickly, and that's exactly where those potential larger price increases could hit. So don't only watch the base price at the event, watch the entire storage ladder. That's where Apple could quietly make the lineup much more expensive. A $100 increase on 256 GB sounds reasonable. Then you select 512 GB and suddenly the gap is $150. Go to 1 TB. Maybe $200. That changes the value equation. And now availability. This is another thing worth watching. The report you shared also points to possible supply chain constraints. So even if Apple announces the phone on September 9, that doesn't automatically mean every configuration is sitting in stores waiting for you. Especially Pro Max, bigger battery, new components, popular new color, higher storage. Put all of those together, and some versions could be much harder to get early. Would that stop me from buying? No, but I'd watch shipping estimates carefully. If Dark Cherry Pro Max 512 GB suddenly moves from launch day to 3 weeks later, that tells you where demand is landing. And then there's the elephant in the room. The iPhone Ultra. Apple is also expected to unveil its first foldable iPhone around the same event. And honestly, that makes the iPhone 18 Pro pricing much more interesting, because imagine the lineup: iPhone 18 Pro around $1199, Pro Max around $1299, then iPhone Ultra reportedly somewhere well above that, possibly around the $2,000 plus level. Now suddenly Pro Max looks almost reasonable. I know that sentence sounds insane, but pricing is relative. If you walk into an Apple store and see $1299 next to $2,000 plus, the Pro Max becomes the normal premium option that could be part of Apple's strategy. Ultra becomes the halo device, the crazy one: foldable screen, new form factor, huge price. Then Pro and Pro Max look familiar, safe, almost sensible. And this is why the September event could be more important than a normal iPhone year. It isn't just a new Pro model. Apple may be changing the entire top end of the iPhone lineup. Now let's come back to the question that actually matters. Should you upgrade? If you're using an iPhone that's 3 or 4 years old, yeah, this is getting interesting. A 20 Pro more efficient chip, 256 GB base storage, camera upgrades, new colors, better battery, and on Pro Max, potentially a 5567 AH cell with a 10 to 12% capacity increase. That's a lot of improvements stacked together, but if you're already on an iPhone 17 Pro, different story. An 18% CPU increase alone is not enough. Dark Cherry is definitely not enough, and 0.25 mm of extra thickness isn't exactly something you'll brag about. The real test is battery efficiency, camera, and price. If Apple lands at $1199, I think the conversation becomes much easier. That's $100 more, about 9%. Not nice, but understandable given the component situation if Apple lands at $1299. Now I need a lot more convincing, and if those earlier $1399 predictions somehow become real, that's where I'd tell most people to stop. Seriously, at that point, wait, see the real camera tests, see real battery numbers, see thermal performance, then decide, because a Pro iPhone should be expensive. Fine, but it still needs to make sense, so right now, here's what I'd watch, not 12 tiny rumors. 4 numbers, September 9 potential launch event, $1199. The more modest iPhone 18 Pro price Gurman is now pointing toward 5,567 mAh, the reported Pro Max battery, and 30% the claimed energy efficiency improvement around a 20 Pro if those numbers hold up. The iPhone 18 Pro story is actually pretty strong. The design stays familiar, but Apple improves the things people actually complain about: battery efficiency, camera storage, and maybe keeps the price increase relatively controlled. But there's still one thing Apple needs to prove. That $100 increase may sound reasonable compared with $200 or $300, but it's still your $100, so when Apple gets on stage, forget the marketing for a minute. Ask one question: what am I getting this year that I will actually notice every day? If the answer is noticeably better battery, cooler performance, and a better camera, $100. Maybe if the answer is just another benchmark and a dark cherry color, keep your current iPhone, and with the event potentially only days away, we won't have to guess much longer.